He was a veteran no one saw. A janitor dismissed by doctors, ignored by nurses. But one night, when danger crept through the ICU, it wasn't a doctor who saved them. It was the man they never looked twice at. As we dive into this story, don't forget to like the video and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe for more powerful content. Marcus Hayes stood on the cracked sidewalk outside the employment agency, the city's gray dawn casting long shadows over his worn jacket. The weight of the uniform he once wore felt heavier now, not with pride, but with loss. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched a folder filled with rejection letters, each one a reminder that the world he fought for didn't seem to want him back. He had returned home 6 months ago, hoping to pick up the pieces of a life interrupted by war. But every job interview chipped away at his hope. Employers saw the lines under his eyes, the stiffness in his gait, and dismissed him quietly, unwilling or afraid to understand the invisible battles he fought daily. At night, his apartment felt colder, emptier. Memories of firefights and explosions replayed relentlessly behind his closed eyelids, stealing sleep. The pain in his knees, from a blast long past, was a constant reminder of sacrifices no one else saw. Calls from family grew less frequent, strained by the silence he carried like a shield. Bills piled on the kitchen table, the numbers blurring as Marcus stared blankly at the stack. Eviction notices loomed, threatening to turn his small sanctuary into the streets he had vowed never to walk again. One afternoon, after another failed interview, Marcus sank onto a bench in the park. A mother passed by, clutching her child's hand, and smiled at him briefly, an acknowledgement of humanity he desperately needed but rarely received. He closed his eyes, whispering a promise he made to himself back in the desert sands, "I won't let this break me." But pride alone wasn't enough to keep hunger and fear at bay. When a friend finally offered him a janitor job at a local hospital, Marcus hesitated. The job was far from the career he dreamed of, but it was something to hold on to when everything else felt like slipping through his fingers. He took it, swallowing the lump of disappointment. But deep down, he still clung to hope. Hope that one day, someone would see past the uniform's absence and recognize the man beneath. The fluorescent lights of the hospital buzzed overhead as Marcus pushed his cleaning cart down endless sterile hallways. The scent of antiseptic mixed with the faint hum of machines, but to Marcus, the place felt colder than any battlefield he'd ever known. The staff barely acknowledged his presence. Nurses hurried past, eyes glued to charts. Doctors exchanged clipped nods, their faces impassive. Patients, wrapped in blankets and frailty, saw him only as background noise, a janitor, invisible and unimportant. Whispers followed him like shadows. Some co-workers muttered about the broken veteran who'd lost his edge. Others rolled their eyes at his quiet demeanor, mistaking his silence for weakness. Marcus felt the sting every time someone dismissed him or avoided eye contact. The weight of invisibility pressed down, reminding him that the uniform no longer granted respect, if it ever had. Some nights, after his shift ended, the memories stormed in fierce and unrelenting. The flash of explosions, the cries of comrades, the crushing loneliness of war. His hands would shake, breath catch, and he'd retreat to the solitude of his small apartment, battling ghosts no one else could see. Yet, through it all, Marcus held on to discipline. Every morning, he arrived early, methodically cleaning every floor and corner. His work was meticulous, not out of obligation, but a quiet testament to the pride he still carried. One evening, a young nurse accidentally bumped into him, barely sparing a glance. "Watch it," she snapped, her tone sharp. Marcus paused, meeting her eyes steadily. "Sorry," he said softly, not letting the bitterness rise. She scoffed and walked away, leaving Marcus to wonder how many battles he'd have to fight before he was truly seen. Despite the humiliation and isolation, Marcus found solace in small moments. A smile from a janitorial colleague, a whispered thank you from a patient, the steady rhythm of his own footsteps in the empty corridors. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the scars and shadows, a spark remained, a spark waiting for a chance to ignite. That night, the hospital was unusually quiet, the usual bustle replaced by the steady beeping of machines and the soft footsteps of night staff. Marcus moved through the halls with practiced ease, his senses alert despite the exhaustion weighing on his body. As he passed the ICU, something caught his eye, a faint hiss near an oxygen tank. The valve was leaking, releasing gas slowly but dangerously close to a patient's room. His heart raced. A single spark here could mean disaster. Then, near the restricted wing, Marcus noticed a man lingering too long, glancing nervously around. The visitor wasn't on any authorized list and seemed out of place. Marcus's military training sharpened his instincts. This was no ordinary visitor. Without hesitation, Marcus radioed the security team, quietly following the man. When the visitor tried to slip past a locked door, Marcus stepped in, blocking his path. The man resisted, but Marcus held firm, his calm authority unnerving in the sterile corridor. Security arrived swiftly, and the intruder was apprehended before he could cause harm. Later, hospital staff learned the oxygen leak had been worsening, unnoticed by most. If left unattended, it could have caused a catastrophic fire. The news spread quietly at first, then grew louder. Marcus Hayes, the janitor who had been overlooked and belittled, had saved lives that night. Doctors who had ignored him before stopped to shake his hand. Nurses offered genuine smiles. Patients whispered his name with gratitude. Yet, Marcus remained humble, deflecting praise with a quiet nod. When the hospital director called him into her office the next day, Marcus braced himself for what might come. Instead of reprimand, she offered thanks and an opportunity, a role on the hospital's safety committee, training staff on emergency protocols. The invisible walls began to crumble. For Marcus, it was more than a new job title. It was recognition, respect, a chance to rebuild not just his career, but his life. The ceremony was small, no flashing cameras, no big media coverage. Just hospital staff gathered in the main lobby, and a framed certificate resting in the director's hands. Marcus stood at the edge of the room, dressed in his usual plain clothes. When they called his name, he hesitated before stepping forward. Applause filled the space, not thunderous, but warm. Genuine. "Mr. Marcus Hayes," the director said, "your actions prevented a tragedy. But more than that, your vigilance, humility, and quiet strength have reminded us all what real service looks like." As she handed him the award, Marcus looked around, not for approval, but for understanding. And this time, he saw it. Not pity. Not suspicion. Just eyes that finally saw him as a man who mattered. He didn't say much. Just a few words, steady and heartfelt. "I didn't do it to be a hero. I just did what I was trained to do, look out for others. Some of us come home and keep fighting, just, in different ways." There were tears in a few eyes. After the applause faded, a young orderly approached him. "Sir, I'm a vet too. Wasn't sure anyone here would ever get it. But seeing you, it helped." Marcus put a hand on the young man's shoulder. "You're not alone." Later that evening, Marcus walked the hospital corridors, not as a ghost, not as a shadow, but as a presence. People greeted him. Some asked for advice. Others just smiled. He had been the man nobody noticed. Now, he was the one they listened to. And while Marcus never wore his uniform again, the pride never left him. Not because of medals. Not because of applause. But because he'd survived when the world tried to forget him, and turned his survival into purpose. He didn't save the world. He just saved a hallway. A few lives. And maybe, finally, his own. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories that inspire, challenge, and stay with you.